So in this explainer, we're going to deconstruct what's called the architecture of confidence. It's a framework for leadership that really challenges traditional ideas of control. It proposes that true stability in any high-performing organization comes from systemic confidence. We're going to explore how this architecture is deliberately designed to replace oversight with genuine capability.
All right, so this model right here, this is the centerpiece of our whole discussion. The architecture of confidence is built on 6 interconnected and reinforcing forces: clarity, integrity, empathy, contribution, consistency, and transparency. We're going to break each one down. But, to really appreciate the solution, we first have to get a handle on the problem it's designed to solve. And this statement right here, this really gets to the heart of the tension. Control is good at one thing: holding a system together, keeping things stable, and managing immediate risk. But its fundamental limitation is that it can't drive adaptation or growth. It just preserves what already exists. And that presents a pretty critical choice for any leader. So let's start by digging into that traditional model. This first section is all about the inherent limits of a system that's built primarily on control. The crucial point here is this trade-off. A system that's governed by control feels safe because it's predictable, right? It protects the present. But that stability comes at a huge cost. The system itself becomes fragile, unable to adapt. You're essentially sacrificing future potential for today's order. Now, this is a really interesting way to reframe a common problem. We often think of micromanagement as a personality flaw, an arrogant boss. But this framework suggests it's actually a systemic response that's born from fear. Specifically, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of failure, and the fear of surprise. And this is exactly how that fear starts to manifest in the real world. A leader adds just one more approval process, one more review cycle, one more checkpoint. And in isolation, each of these little steps feels responsible, almost protective. But when you put them all together, they start to build a cage. And right here, this is the unintended consequence, the quiet damage. Every single new layer of control sends this subtle but very powerful message through the whole system. Your judgment isn't trusted here. And over time, capability doesn't grow. It actually shrinks. Not because people lack skill, but because their autonomy has been slowly and systematically taken away. This brings us to what's called the paradox of control. You see, control is fantastic at getting compliance. It makes your tasks get completed. But the systems we all want to be a part of, the high-performing ones, they require commitment. That's what ensures outcomes are truly owned. So control optimizes for predictability, not for judgment. The minute your team starts asking for permission for decisions they are perfectly capable of making, your performance has already hit its ceiling. Okay, so if control has these pretty significant limitations, what's the alternative? Well, this next section presents a much more durable solution, looking at confidence not as a feeling, but as something you can engineer, a feature of the system's design. You see, the best systems don't just run on the personal confidence of a few individuals, they run on systemic confidence. And what is that? It's a shared belief that the system itself is fair, that expectations are clear, and that outcomes will be supported, not punished. It's the kind of trust that allows people to act with real intent, because everyone understands the principles of how things operate. And let's be really clear about this. This isn't some soft cultural initiative or a feel-good program. Systemic confidence is a structural discipline. It's something that is engineered into the system to replace constant oversight with predictable, principled behavior. It's what allows for autonomy without creating chaos. It's like an invisible architecture that just reduces all that organizational friction. So how is this architecture actually designed and built? Well, that brings us to the core of the framework, the 6 reinforcing forces that create and sustain this systemic confidence. Here they are, the 6 forces: clarity, integrity, empathy, contribution, consistency, and transparency. And the source is very specific that each one of these is absolutely necessary. And maybe more importantly, none of them work in isolation. They are designed to be mutually reinforcing. First up is clarity, and this is really the foundation. It answers 3 critical questions: what actually matters, who has the authority to make a decision, and how are we going to measure success? This is so important because clarity provides the guardrails for action. It's what turns autonomy from a risk into a productive, aligned force. Next up, we have integrity. Think of this as the force that makes sure the system plays by its own rules. In a system with integrity, the rules are applied consistently. Any exceptions are deliberate and principled. They're not political.
Integrity is what keeps confidence stable when things get tough, proving that the system's rules are dependable when it matters most. The third force is empathy, but it's defined in a very specific way here, as contextual awareness. It just means the system is designed with a realistic understanding of human limits and real-world constraints. This is huge because it creates psychological safety. It allows for imperfection and encourages people to speak up, which prevents fear from creating a culture of silence. Fourth on our list is contribution. This is all about moving people beyond just executing tasks to giving them real ownership of outcomes. When people see their own judgment shaping the results, accountability becomes natural. It becomes intrinsic. This is the force that turns simple participation into the deep commitment you need for excellence.
And number 5 is consistency. This is what turns good intentions into actual reliability. A consistent system responds predictably, which reinforces the right behaviors and gets rid of all the guesswork. And it's so important to remember this. Inconsistent leadership will destroy confidence way faster than any single mistake ever could, because it makes the whole environment fundamentally unpredictable.
And finally, we have transparency. This is the force that gets rid of hidden uncertainty by explaining the why behind decisions and being open about the trade-offs. Its real power is that it preempts the narrative. Because without official context, people will always fill in the blanks with speculation, and that speculation is almost always more damaging than the truth. Okay, so we've walked through all 6 forces. The big question now is what happens when they all start working together, reinforcing one another. Our final section looks at the result of this completed architecture. Well, when these forces align, something pretty remarkable happens. Control just becomes redundant. Oversight naturally fades away because the system starts to regulate itself. The leader's role undergoes this fundamental shift, from managing every little action to designing and fine-tuning an environment that builds and sustains capability. And this really brings us to the 2 futures that every leader is, in effect, choosing between. A system of control is, by its nature, defensive. It protects the present by preventing anyone from deviating. But a system of confidence is generative. It protects the future by enabling adaptation. One stalls and the other evolves. Now, this framework isn't just theoretical. It's actually a diagnostic tool. So let's end with a question that comes directly from the source material. Where in your own system is confidence under the most strain? Is it a lack of clarity? Is it a breakdown in consistency? Or is it a failure of that systemic empathy? Because, confidence doesn't usually collapse all at once. It frays at very specific points. And identifying that point of strain, well, that's not an admission of failure. In fact, that is the precise point where leadership can and must begin again.